Good afternoon, everyone. I'm June Riley, CEO of VC Task Force. Thank you for joining us today. As you may know, VC Task Force is an organization that supports the venture community by providing programs and events that address issues of the day. Today, we're going to be joining Gary for Gary's Picks, and he's going to have a wonderful interview, as he always does. So let me turn the floor over to Gary.
Yeah, no, great to be here. Thanks, June. It's great to have Kathleen. My name's Gary Fowler. I'm a serial entrepreneur investor. I've been involved in 17 startups and several unicorns. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, one of the first generative AI companies pre-transformer models. We believe at GSD that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. With that, I'd like to introduce our incredible guest, Kathleen Egan. She's got a well-rounded background from everything from Calvin Klein and consulting all the way up through Oracle. And she is an undergraduate degree in engineering from Lehigh and an MBA from Harvard University. And her company is Ecomedes, making a dent in the universe. So with that, Kathleen, now how in the world did you go from Calvin Klein to where you are today?
Good morning, Gary. Thank you for having me. The thread is technology. And I started working in with products early in my career, things like jets and Patriot missiles in the aerospace and defense. And I was a consultant, so they then moved me into fashion. And I really loved that industry. But it was all about the technology and automating things. And once I discovered that you didn't have to work for a big company, you could work for a small company, I set my sights on getting into the startup community, went and got an MBA at Harvard, and moved out here to Silicon Valley. So the technology part stayed, but just got involved in much faster moving innovative companies.
Now, how does it go? Where were you located when you got started? I know you were in Boston, but in Lehigh. Are you from that area originally, or where are you from originally?
Yeah, I grew up in upstate New York, graduated high school in New Jersey. Lehigh's, right there north of Philadelphia. So I moved right to New York City, even before graduation. I couldn't wait to get there. Loved living in the city. Huge Yankees fan, just everything about it. But then, I realized pretty quickly that an MBA would help kind of break a sort of a glass ceiling that I was sitting as an engineer in a non-technical business. So that's why I went up to Boston to get the MBA.
So you'd have gone down through that, but it's so wide ranging, right? From Chanel and Calvin Klein to missiles. So how did you? You've had such a wide background. What really excites you about that? Do you like having a variety of experiences, or why was that?
Yeah, I do like having a variety of experiences. What I found out, so consulting, you move around a lot. It was called the products group. So those were all products. They were in the same group. What I didn't like though was just sort of doing the ideas and not having taken something to fruition. And really being part of seeing how did the ideas play out. And I didn't know it then, but I'm in love with the agile methodology of trying something, breaking something, testing it, evolving rapidly. And so in that situation, it wasn't that wasn't really the culture. So that's what drew me to startups. And then the common thread being the data. And people talk now about the fear of general AI and takeover of the robots. I remember my first job automating a manual process into like the first kind of ERP, thinking everyone's going to get dumb because we won't be able to balance our checkbooks anymore, and we won't be able to do basic math because the computer's going to do it. And my fears at the time were probably a little overly dramatic. But I do think there is something to the human part of thinking that the smart people are going to hold on to, and other people are going to really let it be done by machines. There's a good symbiotic balance between the two.
I used one of the first calculators. So when I was in ninth grade, I had a Commodore calculator, and my grandmother bought it for me. I'll never forget. It was like a very small calculator. It cost about $70. And I went into my teacher and said, "You cannot use this. You're not going to learn the basic principles." And I had this calculator. I said, "Well, why wouldn't you want to be like optimize what you do? Why wouldn't you want this to make you better?" And um, and it was interesting because I could do the algebra in my head in her class, so I didn't have to do the work. And she said to me, "You can't do this. You can't do things in your head. You can't use calculators." I said, "Well, I won't use a calculator. Just do it in my head anyhow." She said to me, "No, no, no, you have to prove it." So what I learned then is that sometimes we're at the beginning of the curve, we're reluctant to use the technology, and these people that are afraid of it, but if they don't adapt, they die. In this situation with AI, I know was it the Five Gyres, that group that you're in down in LA? Gyres, GYR.
Gyres, yep.
I mean, the situation
yep.
is we've got a big problem with climate, right? And if we don't do something about it, nothing good's going to happen on this planet, which is already happening now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's tremendous opportunity, for AI to help. And in the case of Five Gyres, they're looking at plastic in the ocean. And for decades, we've been going out to sea and picking up samples and trying to extrapolate the plastic in the ocean and extrapolate where it comes from and how much is it. And it's been pretty manual. And kind of counting that stuff up now, I think is going to quickly become brainless, given a little training data and AI. Something that really gives me hope. We've been sampling some of our customers. Our customers are mostly building product manufacturers, so not always the most cutting edge when it comes to technology. And in many ways, they're kind of still instrumenting the systems that I instrumented for Calvin Klein back in the 90s. Right? They're sort of on the first wave of real ERPs. But out of the folks I've talked to, 6 out of 6 have really wanted to lean in on AI, making their business better. And I thought there might be some hesitancy because they're not, they're not always the first to adopt every type of tech. But so far, it seems that people have got the memo that this can be transformative, and the sooner they get on it, the better.
Yeah, and so you look at it, and this. I mean, tell us a little bit about it. So you look at Ecomedes and some of the things that you're doing today, like how are you addressing the problem, and what do we need to do to make it better?
Yeah, so the problem we're addressing has to do with the massive amount of purchases made. This is B to B and B to G government purchases. So large companies, institutional buyers, universities, Fortune 1000 companies, and governments. And everything they buy is vetted through a pretty manual analog process. It's laden with PDFs. They gather data in Excel sheets, and they're expected to align those purchases with their stated goals, things like net zero, zero toxins, using less water, right? There's a whole array of pledges and proclamations that companies have made. And now the SEC is saying, well, wait a minute, you can't just make those, unaccountably. If you're going to make those statements to the market, you got to follow through on it. And they've started to put rules in place. California has put SB 253 in place, right? So all these purchases are under scrutiny now, but still handled in this incredibly manual fashion. So we'd like to move the needle on what amounts to about 15% of emissions of these large purchases that go into buildings and facilities, simply by informing people, by gathering the data, and making it really easy to see how to align that purchase with those goals. The goals are great. Right now, they're pretty hollow because they're hard to actually operate against.
Yeah, you look at it. So how big is the problem? I mean, what are we talking about in terms of expenditures? How much money do these companies have out there, and how big is the problem trying to account for? It's got to be horrendous in terms of trying to figure out.
Yeah, it's about in North America, US, Canada, across businesses and government, it's about 7 trillion in purchases a year. So it's a massive market. We've whittled down to about 1 trillion of that, which includes the products that go into buildings like furnishing, flooring, drywall, about 25 categories that we've picked off. And the built environment in general accounts for about 38% of emissions. That includes operational energy that the buildings, suck in to run our lights and our computers, as well as the embodied carbon. The walls and the ceilings all came from minerals and extraction and chemicals and, pressing and cooking and shipping, and that all uses a tremendous amount of carbon. So it's really powerful to make it transparent. There are early adopters, building owners who are taking that little bit of transparency and really running with it and making creating frameworks and requirements for the spend that they're spending. Then you've got a whole rest of the maturity curve. Some buildings aren't even looking at it at all yet, right? And they're going to have trouble when these voluntary standards become regulated.
Yeah, so when is that going to happen? When are these voluntary standards going to be regulated? What's your prediction?
It's happening slowly, right? This is kind of, it's a hyper local business, right? Every building is a unique spot on the map, a unique cap stack, a unique, use case. California and the European Union are two spots that have a lot of leadership, as does New York City. The federal government holds itself to a higher standard than it does its citizens. Buildings that are run by the GSA have a green procurement compilation, which is mandatory. It's in the phases of being rolled out, via executive order. And that's part of what we do. We help a Department of Energy be compliant with that, called Sandia National Labs. So it's hard to see something super comprehensive, just like building codes and permitting. You've got multiple layers with a concentration at the local level. It is probably going to continue to be a patchwork. All the more reason why you need some way to aggregate that data and make it really easy for the average, interior designer who's just really trying to, get the colors and the look right. And this is all just extra work for them.
Yeah, no, it's right. And so what do they need to look for? What are you looking for exactly? So you're looking for sheetrock, and the carbons, but what kind of things really stick out, and how can companies, what kind of an impact can you have? What things do they do that they don't know about today that they should know about?
Well, when it comes to sheetrock, carbon is definitely one factor. Circularity has been a big growing factor in this area, taking in both, recycled content, pre-consumer or post-consumer, into the manufacturing process, and then end of life, what do you do with it at the end? Roofing has become something that they can really grind up the shingles and then use some percent of that in the next shingle. And there's a lot of debate. Well, doesn't that up the carbon? Because now you got to do the reverse logistics to get the old shingles back. And that takes, until we're fully electric on the transpo, that's going to make carbon too. So every innovation, it's a multi-factor situation that they're very connected. So circularity and carbon are two of the areas that are moving the fastest. Another one, I don't know if you've heard of PFAS. Have you heard of that?
Yeah. But tell me a little bit more about it.
Well, it's a type of chemical that's used in a lot of different materials, from takeout containers and Patagonia waterproof jackets to stain proofing furniture and textiles and flooring. And the federal government has decided that it's not a good ingredient. It's a forever chemical. It never breaks down. It's probably in every cell of every body, and its health effects are still
drink out of a plastic bottle, it goes into your body, right?
Yes. The microplastics and nanoplastics are being found in places that, and thank God for modern, magnification and chemistry that we can see it. But like I've heard a stat, someone said you eat a credit card a day in plastic. I think that's not entirely true. It's not that much, but you are consuming it every day, and it's pervasive. It's across the brain-blood barrier. It's in the placenta, right, and breast milk. So making choices, we call it like upstream choices. So if you buy something with less PFAS or less plastic or less carbon, less general toxins, that will reverberate through that life cycle of the item and to its end of life. And it also sends a really critical demand signal to the market, right? When someone buys that, now that manufacturer can see, okay, people would like less toxins, less carbon, less et cetera. And now they can do design cycles and create the next line of products that are even better. So that's sort of the flywheel. We're trying to goose it with more data.
Well, I mean, that's it, because the companies don't know. Once they know, they can make some decisions against it and to do something better. What's going to happen? I mean, are there any fines or penalties today for companies that don't comply?
So it varies, various things. Again, European Union seems to be at the lead of having that piece. There's a regulation in New York City about how much operational energy you use called Local Law 97, and the fines are pretty significant for buildings over 50,000 square feet. I believe is the threshold. And so fines used to be sort of just a small tax that people just paid, and now they're starting to become more significant. California just budgeted the money to create the enforcement for SB 253. So how and what they do to enforce it has yet to be seen. But I think the fastest one is the market, right? So you've got carrots and sticks. The sticks are pay this fine, you can't be selling in California. The carrot, though, is selling more stuff and demand. We have several manufacturers who are growing rapidly through M&A in addition to organic growth, because they're seeing these other companies not keeping up on sustainability, and they just get so far behind they can't keep up. So they can, swoop in, buy the company, run the playbook, and grow at quite a good clip. So, the ESG investment movement sort of had a short window, right, of when an ESG action and that definition wasn't really even very good, but how it would affect the stock price, and picking stocks. I think you have to open the timeline a little bit, and see it as a strategic direction, that would allow you to be the acquirer instead of the acquiree.
No, it's amazing. So we're coming up to the top of the show. So closing thoughts, and how do people get a hold of you, Kathleen?
I'm at Kathleen at Ecomedes.com, and very active on LinkedIn. Would love to connect with folks there who are interested in, learning more about this intersection of capitalism and sustainability. The two biggest things that scale, we're trying to scale this idea of transparent data, and government can scale and profit can scale. So those are the two areas that we're focused on. And if you're working in that area, or you're working on a green building, we'd love to help.
Yeah, so if they're working on a green building and they're a contractor or developer, you can help them by having them to understand what they're putting inside of the building to make this world a little bit better place.
Exactly.
That's great. Well, thanks for taking time out of your busy scheduled day. I know you've got a fully packed agenda. And thanks to all my audience for one more time joining Gary's Picks. My name's Gary Fowler, and I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. We'll be back to you again soon with another exciting edition. Thank you very much. Take care, Kathleen. Take care, June, and take care, everyone. Thank you.